This is the eLearn Podcast, episode 92.
My definition of hypergrowth is when you start losing control and you start getting frustrated. And it really gets together because you are growing so fast that, like what you used to maybe have a team of 10 people, 20 people. You knew everything they were working on. You knew every euro where every euro was spent. You knew every marketing material, whatever. And then suddenly you are just growing, and you know that if you would try to get to know everything that's happening in your team, you would actually slow down the company.
Welcome to the eLearn Podcast. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. My guest for today is Laura Warnier, the Chief Growth Officer for the online tutoring platform GoStudent, which is, as of this recording, the only EdTech unicorn in Europe. She oversees partnerships, marketing, international expansion, and breaking down silos while boosting collaboration for the company. In this fast-paced conversation, Laura and I discuss how just over 3 years ago, she became the second full-time employee of a company that is currently valued at more than 3 billion euros. That's with a B. And the surprising truth about parents' willingness to use online tutoring pre-pandemic. We also talk about the challenges of growing and operating in the fast-paced, destructive, and high-growth startup universe as a part of the usually slow, methodical, and very traditional education space. Laura and I also talk about how her and her team have approached solving the growth problem faced by every startup that needs to penetrate and earn market share, and how they've helped create legitimacy and professional consistency in a service that is traditionally served by a shadow market. We also talk about how GoStudent found the right balance between price, quality, and availability, and have successfully overcome the argument that if it isn't expensive, it can't be high quality. We also touch on how this works in terms of paying and rewarding tutors. We also talk about the decentralized nature and structure of the company and how this allows them to be extremely local in terms of service, sales pitch, and pricing. Laura and I also talk about how GoStudent has positioned their service to eliminate any connection with stigma or shame, and actually has repositioned tutoring as something for solving problems, achieving more, and becoming a regular part of education in general. Laura and I also talk about the importance of partnerships with schools, governments, and businesses, and how GoStudent is currently approaching this, with the acknowledgement that this is still very, very early days for them. Laura and I also talk about examples of where GoStudent has faced challenges and completely failed, but how they've used these as growth opportunities for continued success. And then finally, Laura and I talk about what hypergrowth actually is and how she defines it and ultimately manages and finds flow within it. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The eLearning Podcast is sponsored by the eLearn Success Series, a uniquely valuable set of events that bring together sector experts and thought leaders to offer solutions to the most critical challenges and issues at the intersection of education and technology. Get your free ticket to all 4 sessions at elearnsuccessseries.com. And OpenLMS, a company that provides world-class LMS solutions that empower organizations to meet education and workplace learning needs. Learn more by visiting openlms.net.
A fantastic guest today with Laura Warnier.
Yes, perfect.
No, it's so close, but my French is terrible. Laura, you are the Chief Growth Officer for a company that we've been following very, very closely for quite some time now. The company is called GoStudent. Mm-hmm. You joined them back in 2018, but as I do with all of my guests here on the hot seat, can you just give us the 30 seconds, the 60 seconds on who you are and what you do for GoStudent?
Yes, so I'm Laura. So I'm actually from Belgium. I joined actually GoStudent now 3 years ago. So at the early days of the company, so I joined as the second full-time employee. So when I joined, there was only a couple of developers who were like freelancers and students. And I joined the company to actually develop the whole commercial strategy. So building our customer acquisition machine, as we like to say it. So the whole sales and marketing department. And then in 2020, so we raised actually our Series A with Left Lane Capital and the and capital. And thanks to this investment, we actually was responsible to launch GoStudent outside of our home market. So our home market, which is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And because I'm a French speaker, we started with France and Belgium, and then Spain. And then I built a team that enabled us actually to launch GoStudent in 15 markets last year, in Europe, Russia, Turkey, Canada also, and Latin America.
Wow. I mean, that's just like, that's what you did in the afternoon, right? Like that's, you're like, wait until next week. That's amazing. That's an incredible, like I said, we've been watching GoStudent for a while. The growth of the company obviously accelerated across the, because of the pandemic as well, but it's just, all of the pieces came together, but you've got a product that works and, people are really excited about it. I want to remind everybody that we're live here if you're on Facebook, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on YouTube and you're watching us, we can take your questions. So, throw them in the live chat there. Your questions for Laura and GoStudent. We'll try to answer them if we can, but please do participate. It'd be fantastic. So 2018, and I know that GoStudent was kind of started as a WhatsApp chat in 2015 by the founder.
Exactly.
How did you, I just want to dig a little deeper into your personal story. Like, did you know these people, or was there a call? Did you find it on a job board somewhere? Did you know somebody? Did you knock on a door? Were you part of a network? Like, how did you find your way into this company?
This is a very good question. So the first question starts with why were I in Austria? Who decided to move to Austria? And so I always say I moved to Austria for love and stayed for the job, which actually became the second love of my life, probably. And so at that time, actually, I started my career at HelloFresh, so Rocket Internet in Berlin. So it was in 2013. Then I moved to Google in Dublin. And actually, when I was in Google, I was a bit missing also the old startup feeling, like this, fast-paced environment. And when I moved to Austria, like I could not find directly this environment, but I was actually actively looking to join a startup again at the very early days, where that everything that you are doing on a daily basis, you see the impact right away. And by connection, I would say, I've heard that Felix and Gregor were actually looking for a head of sales and marketing. And to be honest, the first actually feedback I gave to the recruiter, because they had a headhunter, they told me about them. And I was like, guys, I mean, it's nice. It's a cute mobile application. But if I move to a startup, I want a startup that has a potential to become a unicorn. And they told me, wait a second. I mean, it's true. They are young. They were not even 25 at that time. But get to know them. And I went to the interview, and actually the feedback that they gave me is that I actually took over the interview. I was the one asking all the questions, and they say, okay, we might actually need this profile. And why for me it was actually interesting is that, so I come from a family where my father is an entrepreneur, and my mother used to be a teacher of English, and then became actually a head teacher in a high school. And I would say that I've been educated in these two environments where you need to be bold, you need to go outside of the rules, you need to build something, and at the same time where education matters, and also international, because she taught me English quite early in my days. And so I was like, GoStudent makes sense. And then since then, it evolved quite a lot. So as you say, from it was a homeschooling chat when they started in 2015. It was just actually a WhatsApp group with some friends that developed into a mobile application. But then in 2018, what they have realized is that the mobile application that they had built from a business perspective, a business model, a monetization would not have been that easy. And then the students were asking for one-on-one tutoring. And so they use actually the community. So the application that they had developed back in the days was a community of tutors, mainly university students, who were helping high school students with any questions. So they could write, like, hey, this is my homework. I'm blocked with that exercise. Can someone help me? And so what they did is they used this network of tutors who were answering all those questions. They moved them on the online classroom. They matched with the student. But what they realized at that time is that selling directly to the student, it didn't make sense, because the student didn't want to spend, like 20 euros on tutoring, on an extra 1 hour of mathematics. They wanted to have the tutoring session maybe, but not to pay for it. And so I arrived to actually work on a strategy to target the parents with marketing campaigns, and how to convince actually the parents. And back in the days, it was actually convincing the parents not to take tutoring classes, because we're using mainly search campaigns. So parents were actively searching for a tutor. but to actually convince them to do it online. Because back in the days, we had around 30% of the parents were contacting the first time who did not even want to try out online tutoring. And this completely changed after COVID.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want to take the story where you're going right there, but I want to pause. I want to pivot just 1 second, because you put something very interesting on the table that I think I see play out a lot, and that is the challenge of entrepreneur, fast-paced, next generation startup, future looking, and school, academia, less not let's not say but systematic, and machinery that moves, let's just be honest, usually relatively slow.
Yes.
So this is usually tutoring, or this is a tutoring platform, but how have you, or how has GoStudent captured both of those and made those into one conversation?
So I think for us, the most important is that we've been always positioning ourselves as complementary to school, right? The school system is the way it is. It's one teacher for 25 students. The teachers are doing an amazing job, but they also often don't have the resources to adapt to every learning style and to every student. And what we say is that every student is unique and therefore should be also the teacher. But in reality, you cannot always have one teacher for one student. And that's where we arrive and we say, okay, so sometimes actually for certain students, the school is moving too fast. There are certain students who have actually difficulty to absorb the subject with the teacher. And that's why they need actually someone after school to help them to review the subject, to maybe approach it in a different way, to adapt to their learning style and so on. And then you have, on the other hand, you have those students who maybe are getting bored at school. And as you say, where the school system maybe is also a bit slower. And that's where we are coming to actually help the student to see, hey, education can be fun. We can adapt to your style. We can adapt to your speed and so on. And because when we look at those two systems, the startup world and the school world, so far we are not really, we are starting step by step by partnering with the school, but from day one, we've been working actually with the customer himself. So we've been targeting the parents, the student, and so on. And the student, I always say, if schools were actually a company who the main objective was about retention of customer, they would actually adapt the school system to the kids, to the students. And maybe today they would actually, all the schools would be on TikTok.
Yeah. Totally possible. I want to remind everybody that I am live here with Laura Warnier from GoStudent. She's the Chief Growth Officer of a true unicorn. I read that you're valued at several $1 billion now. I think it's over $3 billion.
3 billion euros, yeah.
And so 3 billion euros, sorry. Which since that's just astronomical growth over a 4-year period since you came on to into the company. We were talking earlier about sort of that path from WhatsApp group, this sort of, let me just say, call it innocent, is it sort of innocent, helpful, like group to sort of help to, wow, this kind of grew, and, students were starting to get real help from college students to high school students. And then it moved into a place where you were actually brought on board to take this from to a B2C perspective and start targeting the parents. People who are listening right now, there's many people who are either in that college or in that high school, but there's a lot of, people listening right now as well who are saying, like, how can I get more attention? How can I grow the app or the plugin or the system that I've created? Are there, particular tried and true steps that you took with GoTo in order to start growing? Or did you have to break the whole process and say, look, this is really unique for us? Well, how did you approach solving the growth problem?
So I think for us is that there was an enormous need on the market, right? So, and I'm talking about before COVID. So it's not that COVID actually exploded everything. So before, back in the days, what we realized is that the tutoring market was actually mainly covered by the shadow market. So around 80% across the world of the tutors were what we call the tutor from next door, the cousin of the friend, the neighbors. And what we try to do is to bring actually all those talents on our platform, on our managed marketplace, to also show to the parents, first to give parents the access to high quality tutors wherever they are. So even if you live in a small city or whatever, you could have access to a tutor that is at one of the best universities. And then also bringing the transparency and ensuring that there is, we certify all those tutors, right? It's what we call a managed marketplace. So it's not that every tutor can just post a job ad. No, we are the ones selecting those tutors. So first, actually, they need to pass a test on the subject that they want to teach. Then they have an interview. So we assess the pedagogical skills. So to make sure that even if they know the subject, they can also teach that to the kid. And then there is actually an onboarding on how to use the tools of GoStudent, what it is to be part of the GoStudent community and to teach the GoStudent way. And we only, based on that, we only we only kind of accept 5 to 10% of the candidates who apply to become a tutor at GoStudent. So for us, really, there was this access. So because we are online, you had access to high quality because we were making sure that we were hiring only the best, and then making it actually affordable, because bringing online tutoring enabled to cut the price to quite down heavily for a session. And so the need was there. The parents were looking for a tutor, mainly back in the day. So in Germany, in the German-speaking area, it's a bit different than in other countries, like Germany and France is very similar, is that tutoring is actually, it's based actually on a problem. So it's like the painkiller. You know, the kids come back from school, he has a bad grade in mathematics, alert at home, the parents are worried. And then what they're doing is like they are searching for a tutor for 4 or 5 hours online to cover and to make sure that the kid has a good grade for the next exam. And that's where we were capturing actually this demand of actively searching for a tutor for the kids. And then what we are telling and who are competing against the shadow market, or sometimes those institutions where they are like mainly doing group classes and it's physical, we were just telling that we have the highest quality at a better price and wherever you are. And that actually, so at the end of the day, unlocking growth is about finding the problem. It's about finding a problem and having a solution to it. And because it's not about only finding the solution, it's about being able to communicate around it and to really show and convince the customer that you do it in the right way. And for us, something that really unlocked us, because as I say, everyone, like not everyone, but a lot of people were actually looking for tutoring. So it was around like 50% actually of the students at one point tutoring already in their life. And a lot of were actively searching for tutoring, but they wanted offline tutoring. They want the parents wanted that the tutor come to the house, sit next to the kid, because that was the only way. Online was like, no, it's only for gaming or whatever. And we had to convince them. So what we did is that we actually started with a sales team. So we built actually a first sales team that were convincing the parent who were looking for a tutor offline that he had to try it online. And then he really discovered actually the quality of education that we could give. And on top of that, it was cheaper. And on top of that, they didn't have to clean their house when the tutor comes in. And so altogether, they really saw the value of working with us.
Fantastic. How did you deal with, so 2 questions. One is about price elasticity, because what you're saying is you unlocked the fact that it was an opaque market. Many people, as you said, it was in the shadows. So, there wasn't like an open market about what do things cost. Is it $10 an hour? Is it $100 an hour or euros, sorry, an hour? And then you said, look, so being able to offer, a high quality service for much less, it's worked for you well. How much did you have to overcome the process and the sales process of this is cheap, so maybe it's not that good of quality, right? Like I think that's we've had other people who've talked about tutoring services on the show before, and they've said, look, in some places, like let's just say California, New York, if you're not paying 100 euros an hour, people are gonna say, look, this isn't worth it, right? Like there's that perception. How have you dealt with that?
I think that's actually very American. I've never heard that on the phone from a German customer.
I think
it was never the problem.
You find that all over the world, right? Like especially where I sit here in Mexico. If you're not paying a certain price, then there's no way that it can be quality, because you're not paying enough.
And you're totally right. And we really need to find the right balance. So back in the days, it was also kind of we were not doing like big research or whatever, just like you put a price, you see how the parent react. And doing it with sales, it's amazing, because when you only sell via your website marketing, you actually don't have the direct feedback of the customer. That when you're on the phone, you really know, like you give a pitch and you have a direct feedback. You hear the customer who laugh, the customer who say no way, the customer who just like question things. And that's why you can actually learn, like you have those learning loops that are so fast. That's why we could also go to that growth. But now, like when we enter new markets, we do pricing research to really understand. So they're actually very like advanced method to understand exactly what you say. So what is the maximum I would pay? What is the minimum I would pay? And then you find actually something in the middle based on how you want to position yourself. So yes, we want to be shown as a quality service, but at the same time that is affordable.
And then flip that around to me. Like, what's the negotiation or what's the process with the tutor on the back end? Is it a set fee that every tutor gets? Is it differentiated according to where they are in the world? Differentiated according to the subject or price that they're offering? Like, walk me through that process.
Yeah. So first of all, of course, across countries, I mean, there is different purchasing power. We also have different prices for our customers. So of course, there is also different pricing for the tutors. So that's definitely the one topic. The second is actually we also try to reward like if a tutor is good or a tutor has been working with us for some time, also how we actually adapt the pricing on that end.
Fantastic. So you started in Vienna, you started in Austria, you started in Germany, you started in Switzerland. And as you just said, I love your, like you said, that instant feedback. You're like, I've never once heard anybody say cheaper is not better, in Germany, right? Tell me how then, what you need to do to, as you say, unlock France, a different culture, Spain, a different culture, and then you're moving out into the Americas, Canada, and other parts of Europe and beyond. What are the different cultural considerations that you need to look at? And then, I mean, let's talk school systems. Like, how do you even talk about different school systems? Like, walk me through some of that complexity.
Yeah. So one actually of our main benefit, like one of our main, like I would say, advantage is that, so we are a very centralized company in the way that we are operating. So the structure of the different departments, how marketing is experiencing and so on. But at the same time, we're also very local because all the operations, they're actually in all the local countries. So we have an office in Lyon in France. We have an office in London in the UK, in Toronto and in Vancouver in Canada, and so on. And this actually enables us, and that's one actually of the success of our international expansion, is that we have a country manager for every country who is actually 90% of the time born in that country, who knows the education system, who speaks the language, who is himself actually could even potentially be one of our customers, and we have some of them. And they're actually the one who are going to tell us, okay, at the beginning, these are the 20% of the strategy that need to be localized. In some markets, it's adding a few different subjects. It can be also the way we are pitching to the customers. Like you have some customers, I don't know, like maybe in Germany or whatever, they would not expect to have chit chat on the phone before starting the sales conversation. That in Mexico, that would be maybe completely different, that they would expect first to get to know each other before we go down to business. Or for example, also you have a customer in Mexico who often doesn't like to say no. So they would say yes, yes, and then they would never reply at one point, pick up the phone. That a Dutch person would tell you straight away, no, I don't care. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Not for me. So these are a bit of the subtleties that we identified, and very quickly, thanks to our country manager. And we adapt a bit the messaging on the marketing side or the pitch actually for sales. But then what we also look at is, of course, like what are parents expecting from a tutor side. And this will sometimes change a bit across the world and mainly actually across the customer segment. So it's not only about a person who is in Canada versus a person in Turkey, but it's more about what we call customer segmentation at the end of the day. And we have consumer insights team who are making those research. And what we see is that you have some customers where they are completely detached, for example, of the education. For them, I don't know, it's a public topic. The government is taking care. So why should I be involved? My kid is doing okay. Should be fine. Or then you have, on the other hand, the customers who are like super high achiever. They maybe themselves already have a good education, but they want even more for the kids. They are pushing the kids to the next level. And so what they do is like, it's not they are looking for a tutor because the kid has an issue in mathematics, but more because they just want to develop the full potential of the kid. And I always make this kind of like image of tutoring versus actually sport. So in sport, you have the kids who, so you come back from Christmas or Thanksgiving for the Americans, and you have eaten a bit too much, and then it's like, it's time to maybe go to the gym, and then you start having a subscription to the gym, and you just have a problem, and then you try to find a solution. And that's, for example, what's the market in Germany, is that there is a bad grades coming back from school, and then we need to find a solution. But then you have the other two extremes, for example, the Chinese market, where you have like the parents who are super competitive, where they really want the kids, to become the best in school. That's why we have the highest amount actually of those math genius who are like winning all the competition, also coming from China or from Asia, because there is much more pressure. And the analogy with sport is like actually the Olympic players, the one who are not just doing, like a running from time to time. They are the one actually going the extra mile. And then what we have, and that's what we try to do at GoStudent, is the one in the middle, is that tutoring starts to be actually part of your lifestyle, as actually running once or twice a week is part of your habit. And it just makes you feel better, right? It makes you feel more confident. It makes you feel like things are just running, and it's part of it. And that's what we want to do with tutoring, is just to show to students that by having 1 or 2 hours or even of needed more of tutoring per week, first of all, you should not be ashamed of it. So that's very important. And second is there just to help you to develop your full potential and be confident at school.
That was I wanted to see, like, go a little deeper, because at least in my culture and in the United States, tutoring has a very, it has a stigma attached to it, right? If you're going to be sent to a tutor, that means that you're less, or, maybe you're outstanding. Whereas, as you said as well, there's a whole other set of people in the world where tutoring is used as a way to advance, or, hey, look, we're going to be an overachiever. How have you positioned GoStudent to address those issues of stigma, or hey, look, this is, because it sounds like, hey, this is fun, like this is, I mean, especially with your energy, it's so infectious. It's just, how have you guys positioned in that way?
Exactly. So that's a bit also the way we are presenting our brand, right? I mean, you have on the one hand the blue, which is this very confident color, this calming, this, I'm relaxed, I have everything under control. And then you have the yellow, the energy, the learning can be fun. And that's actually the way that we are trying to communicate with the customers, for the customer and the student to be part of a community, the tutor to be part of a community, and to see that, it's not being ashamed of having tutoring. It's like you even go to school maybe with your hoodie, because that the GoStudent hoodie, because you're proud of being part of the GoStudent culture.
Interesting. What about moving, I guess it's not a market, but expanding the market? I mean, mostly what we've talked about right now is that high school or a K through 12 student, where, a tutor could help them either from a university or not. Is there a vision to move into kind of a lifelong learner profile as well, for adults, for, corporations, those kinds of things?
What I love at GoStudent is that we don't have any limit. So only actually limitation of time and resources. We are building the #1 global school, right? To enable the full potential of every student. A student starts at the age of 1 day until the end of these days. Right now, we are tackling mainly the K-12 market, because that's where we saw that there was actually the biggest need, and that there was also like a hole in the market where in many countries, actually, this need was not addressed in the way that we're doing it. But we are definitely open to see actually how we're going to build this #1 global school.
How important have partnerships been? You've described, setting up a country manager, the pre-market research that you do before you enter a new market, and then, understanding where you're going. But is GoStudent now also partnering with universities, with schools? Like how does your delivery? In the initial stages, it was a network of friends, and then it kind of built out. I'm just kind of wondering, have you started to build partnerships? how has that affected your churn with tutors and those kinds of things?
Yeah, good question. We are still actually at like everything I would say at GoStudent, we are still at the very early days, and partnership is part of it. So partnership, we see it actually in the whole ecosystem. So it's how you are partnering with schools. That's one area. Then it's like how you are partnering actually with the government, how you are partnering also with, companies. Because, for example, on the company side, we have like millions of employees who, when they come back from work, they are tired. They just want to enjoy actually quality time with their family. And it's how companies are actually supporting their employees to actually give tutoring session, for example, to the kids of the employees. So the employee, when he come back home, his day is over, he enjoy quality time, he is completely relaxed and re-energized for the day afterwards. It's also, we are partnering, as you were saying, with the universities where the majority of our tutors come from. How can we actually show them that they can have a flexible work, earning pocket money, or for some others, it's like actually money that they need to live, while actually adapting to their life, to their study life. So partnership, there is also strategic partnerships that we can do on how actually to improve our product. So strategic partnership that sometimes start with partnership, then end up in a merger and acquisition. So for example, an example of a company that we have recently acquired from the UK, Seneca Learning, who is actually a freemium application that actually distributes that the kids and even the teachers can have access to just have content to learn on their own. And so we are looking at all those type of partnerships, from school to more strategic and corporate partnership, to just improve actually our service and to also have access to our audience.
Fantastic. Folks, I'm talking with Laura Warnier. Laura Warnier. I apologize. Gosh, that fantastic name, and I can continue to butcher it. I apologize. She's the Chief Growth Officer at GoStudent. It's a unicorn from Vienna, Austria, that is literally exploding across the education space, providing tutoring services and more. If you do have a question for us, please put it in the chat. We'd love to see it. And if you're listening to the recording of this, put it in the, put your question in there anyway, because we do see them and we'd love to connect with you. Laura, where I would like to ask you next is to open the kimono a little bit, if you're willing. As you've characterized things right now, things move so fast and you've had a ton of success. Where have you fallen, or what, where have you run into the road, or where have, I'd love to hear one or two examples of a challenge that you faced, especially in your growth operation, where you're like, oh, that didn't work, and so we can learn from that, and maybe like how you pivot from those types of situations.
I can give you two main examples. So really that I experienced myself. So on the one hand, for example, the marketing team. So until actually the end of 2020, there was 5 people in the marketing team, and we actually completely exploded this team in 2021 because of the growth that we have experienced. So we had actually we experienced a 700% year-on-year growth from 2021 to from beginning of 2021 to the end of 2021, and we actually were a bit too late to hire all those people. So first we actually had to move our marketing headquarters in Berlin, because that's where we could find the talents who have seen and experienced hypergrowth, because there is a lot of startups there. And then, it takes time to find those talents, because one thing that I'm known for is to be very picky with the people that I am hiring. And in marketing, you are looking for expertise, but you're also looking for culture fit. And those are 2 very important topics. So these actually, we were a bit too late, I would say, at the beginning. So we had to really ramp up very fast to be able to actually face the growth that we were going to have. So one of my main learnings was to be a bit more, to forecast a bit more what's coming next. It's always easier to say afterwards, because when you're in this hyper growth phase, you sometimes have even kind of the wall below you, and you're just trying to push it and to push it. And I think that sometimes it's so important to take a step back and think, okay, where do we see ourselves? And it's not about 2 or 3 years time. It's sometimes just where do we see ourselves in 3 months, and do we have the resources internally to make it happen? And the second thing actually was around international expansion. So how we actually work a bit more on analyzing also the markets upfront, and also getting a bit more prepared, because at the beginning it was not an issue for us we were super agile. When the company is actually, when we launched the French market, we're 100 people in the company. So we were super agile on what needed to be adapted for the French market. But when we launched our 22nd market end of last year, we are in a complete different environment, right? We have 1,500 employees. We have a structure that is much more complex. We have battles between priorities, I would say. And there we also learn how to prepare a bit more upfront to make sure that all the teams that need to work with us are ready for the localization that is required for entering this market.
Wow, thanks for sharing this. I really appreciate that. I know that for many people, what's the also the definition of hypergrowth, right? For many of us, getting a couple extra customers, or getting a few more people who use our app, or a few more students in my classroom, that's a huge accomplishment, or few people downloading my course. At what stage do you do you consider that you've moved into a hypergrowth, and what are the critical pieces that how do you change in terms of what do you focus on when you're dealing with hypergrowth? Is it total adaptability? Is it it's a total Scrum process, or agile process? Like what button do you push when you move into that hypergrowth stage?
I would say actually my definition of hypergrowth is when you start losing control and you start getting frustrated. And it really gets together because you are growing so fast that, like what you used to maybe have a team of 10 people, 20 people. You knew everything they were working on. You knew every euro where every euro was spent. You knew every marketing material, whatever. And then suddenly you are just growing, and you know that if you would try to get to know everything that's happening in your team, you would actually slow down the company. So you need to work on yourself and say, okay, I just need to accept that I trust my people, that I don't know, that sometimes, the CEO, the investors ask me a question about, for example, marketing or international expansion, and I just don't know because I haven't asked. And I just know that my team know how to handle that, and I just need to ask the question. And that's really these things and that's why like hiring your team is so important, because it's all about trust, and trust is the source of hypergrowth, in my opinion. The second thing is frustration, because hypergrowth is actually that's when communication issues start to come. Everyone goes speed. You don't have time to think, okay, one decision, what are the consequences of that decision to all the stakeholders around it, or maybe in the future, and so on. You just need to go. I mean, you take hundreds of decisions every day on Slack. Slack is an amazing tool for hypergrowth because you just don't, you don't spend time in meetings, chit chat, and so on. You just take decisions on the go all the time. And sometimes, yes, you go too fast to make a decision, or you maybe didn't include someone who would have liked to be included, or you sometimes are not always being on the democratic side of taking decision, but it's just because it's needed to reach actually our growth expectation.
Second, almost final question for you, but what, so we talked about your expansion, your growth, we talked about some challenges. Now that you're sitting here 5 years later, you're still exploding, you're still growing, absolutely, you are in that hypergrowth stage. What are 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice that you would give to someone else, or maybe the Laura of 2018? Like what pieces of advice would you give to them about, hey, look, you're kind of on the precipice of growth. Here's what I would do differently, or here's what I would prepare for.
It's a good question. And to be honest, I think we always ask about what are the mistakes that you've done, or I would not do anything differently because I think that if I would have done things differently, other problems would have came. And I think that for me, my main learnings, and that was really something that really enabled me to face this hypergrowth, is just being confident that whatever will come on my way, we'll find a solution. And it happened with expansion. So for example, we entered, as I said, 15 countries within a year. Tremendous growth. And the reason that we could do that is just that we were not overthinking. We were not over-analyzing. We were just going, opening, executing. And then, we faced quite some problems, but it was part of the game. And it was just it was the next challenge that you needed, so it doesn't get boring.
Yeah, that's great. So last question I ask everybody on the hot seat here is, as you look forward into the next 6 months, 12 months, what are you most excited about personally? Is there something that's changing at GoStudent, something that's coming down the pipe? Is it another company that you're excited about? Is it the next new market? Like what, when you get up, obviously you're excited about, growing your team and whatnot, but what else are you passionate about?
I mean, first of all, there is the new markets. Until now, we've been expanding mainly actually in markets that I know. So Europe, also the Americas, Latin America, which is also still a culture that is different, but still quite similar. When we go to, Middle East, to Asia and so on, that's a complete different culture. That's going to be a different challenge. And there, for example, I will know that I will need to study much more the market to better understand the culture, because there might be also some clash coming in. Based on the culture fit. So that's, for me, that's one of the big excitement. Second topic is how, the way we want to develop the companies, we want to develop the potential of every student, right? And every student in certain countries, like in Latin America, you need to think about how you're actually enabling every student based on the purchasing power. And we actually want in the future, so to start with more and more initiatives on the corporate social responsibility side, working with partners and so on, also working on adapting our product for those markets to make sure that we enable every student.
That's fantastic. And I will tie it in a bow there. That's a fantastic vision for the future. Laura Warnier, Chief Growth Officer of GoStudent, a unicorn EdTech company out of Vienna, Austria. Thank you so much for taking 30 minutes out of your day today to talk with us. I wish you all the luck, and I know that we're going to see Felix in our EdTech session for the eLearn Success Summit in July.
Perfect.
So that'll be our next touch point. But thank you so much. I wish you the best day.
Thank you, Stephen, for the invitation. Bye-bye.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the eLearning Podcast. If you like what you heard, please do me the favor of following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whichever social media you prefer. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper on e-learning, I encourage you to get your free ticket to the eLearning Success Summit, where there are more than 70 hours of presentations on best practices. Just go to elearningsuccesssummit.com. And then finally, for the latest news, information, and resources about e-learning, come subscribe to our newsletter at lmspulse.com. Thanks.